Here we're going to look at stock dividends, stock splits, and spinoffs. And so by definition, a stock dividend is when a company issues additional shares rather than cash to its shareholders. So an example we have here is a company declares a 10% stock dividend. And so when the company declares a 10% stock dividend, what that means is for every 10 shares that you own, you get one additional share of stock. So essentially what that means is you're increasing the number of shares outstanding that you have by 10%. And there are no other underlying changes that are going on in the firm. It's just you're giving your shareholders new shares in proportion to what they currently hold. So a stock split is defined as a stock dividend of 50% or higher. And so a 50% stock split would mean that investors or shareholders receive 1 share for every 2 shares held. So essentially that would mean they would have 3 total shares after the split rather than the original 2. So the 50% stock split means you're increasing the number of shares outstanding by 50%. Because of this proportion where for every 2 that you had held, for every 2 shares of stock that you had held pre-split, you hold 3 shares post-split. This is called a 3-for-2 stock split. A 100% split would mean that shareholders receive 1 share for each share that they hold. So what that means is they would hold 2 total shares post-split for every 1 share that they held. And so what this is called is a 2-for-1 stock split. Because for every 1 share that you held previously, you hold 2 shares post-split. So again, stock dividend means that shareholders receive additional shares, and a stock split is a special form of stock dividend where the stock dividend is 50% or higher. The results of a stock dividend and split, there's no cash directly paid out to shareholders. It's just new shares are given, and that's it. So the total market value of the firm isn't changed. There's no cash distribution. There's no cash taken in. Nothing about the firm really changes except for the number of shares outstanding. So effectively, there's no direct impact on the market value of the firm. So we'll put in parentheses, there's no direct impact. And we'll get to that in a second. So essentially what happens is the firm value isn't changed. What you're doing is increasing the number of shares outstanding without changing firm value. So essentially what that means is the stock price is going to fall, but shareholders will make up for the stock price decrease by being able to have more shares. So they'll have the same total, the firm itself will have the same total market value. It's just spanned out over a larger number of shares. So here we have an example. A company's stock currently sells for $300 and it declares a 2-for-1 stock split. We want to know what its new share price will be. So the pre-split stock price is 300 bucks. Then it goes, then the firm goes to a 3-for-2 split. Or a 50% stock dividend. So the new price is 300 bucks. But for every 2 shares that you had previously, those 2 shares become 3. And so you could think of this as, let's say you hold 2 shares of stock. That's a $600 value. Then the company goes for the 3-for-2 split. Post-split, you hold 3 shares. But nothing else has changed about the value of the firm. The firm itself is still the same, so that should still be a $600 value. It's just, what that means is previously you had 2 shares at $300 per share. After the split, you hold 3 shares, and to get the same $600 value, you would have $200 per share. So the price after the split would have to be 200 bucks, because since every 2 shares became 3, those 3 shares still have to sell for the same amount that the 2 shares did previously, because nothing else changed about the firm, especially when you look at the tax consequences. Effectively, there are no tax consequences. Stock dividends aren't taxed, so there's no real consequence to a stock dividend except for the share price decreasing. So there's no direct impact on the firm's stock price. Or I'm sorry, there is a direct impact on stock price, but not on firm value. So it seems like there's no advantage to splits. So the question is, why would a firm split? And some of this has to do with overall costs that investors face. Why split? Shares typically sell in round lots. Which means they sell in blocks of 100 shares. And so if you're talking about buying a share of stock that sells for 50 bucks, what that would mean is if you wanted to buy stock that sells at 50 bucks a share, if you're buying 100 shares, that becomes a $5,000 investment, and that can be costly. And so essentially what splits do is splits enable a price drop. Splits induce a price drop that enables smaller investors to buy the stock, because they're still going to be buying in round lots of 100 shares. And so the cheaper that you can make a share of stock, the more investors that those shares become available to. When you open up your shares to new markets, What that's going to do is increase demand. And when demand increases, liquidity increases. So ultimately, studies have shown that stock splits will actually increase firm value by about 2%. And this is all due to the indirect effect of the split, because the split in and of itself just says we're going to spread the firm's value over more shares. So there's no direct impact of the split, but indirectly you increase the demand for the stock, you make it more liquid, and so that actually increases the value of the firm because your shares are more liquid. Now, historically, most splits have been designed to keep shares below $100 a share. And it's all of this is to try to create value through enhancing the liquidity of a share of stock.